Okay, we're live. Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Natoli. Thank you, everyone who got us live. I love you. And we meet every Friday morning. And A Course in Miracles is mind training. It is a self-study course in spiritual psychology. It is a way to become aware of what you have previously been unaware of. You notice your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions. And this morning, I'm going to co-teach with David Tompkinson. I'm actually going to, woohoo, yes. I'm going to let him drive the bus today. We're going to carry on from last week. I did an illustration about healing addictions. And David Tompkinson is just a brilliant teacher. You are. Okay. Today you're going to accept it. He has great difficulty accepting his brilliance. He's brilliant. And he showed Bill and I an illustration several months ago that was so simple because we complicate addictions. We think it's hard. And he drew this illustration about leaving addictions. And I've been wanting to get you on camera and share this for a very long time. So I'm very excited that you're here and you want to share this. And announcements. What announcements do we have? Vicky Poppy is having a Christmas party. And I heard that she changed the date from Saturday to Sunday. So it was December 16th. It's now December 17th is that correct? At 3 p.m.?
I don't know what time, but you did change it.
Okay, so Sunday, December 17th at Vicky Poppy's house in Quincy, Mass. And it's always just an incredible celebration, a lot of food. Please bring something to share, a dish, hot dish, cold dish, dessert, salad, whatever you want. And tickets are still available. Thank you for that. So who's going to the ACIM conference in San Francisco in February? Anyone here yet? You are going? Oh, did you get your ticket yet? Okay, we have 5 tickets left at the $4.99 price. So the tickets go up to $649. It includes the whole weekend of workshops and all your meals. It is such an incredible way to really be with individuals who have dedicated their life to A Course in Miracles. We're all in the same hotel for the whole weekend. So it's a party. And for you guys online, if you want to come, just email lisa@teachersofgod.org. Bill and I bought some advance tickets for $4.99. And the topic is love has no exceptions. And there's this great line in A Course in Miracles that healing is an ability that can and must be learned, and it must be developed. And so that's another one. We think healing is complicated, and they were being told that healing is an ability that can and must be developed if you are to be healed. And so we're actually going to be talking about some of that today, because all to me, A Course in Miracles is becoming aware of your thoughts, feelings, emotions, your energy, your attitude, and making a decision to shift. And we think, I don't know how to do that. Yes, you do. You absolutely have the power and the ability in you to change your attitude. It's just a matter of wanting to do it. And to me, what A Course in Miracles is quantum physics. The scientists have already proven there is no world. They've already proven it. It's that nothing's solid here. But you think it's solid because your thoughts keep going to one familiar reality. And they call it the infinite field of potentiality. All possibilities are available to you right now. And in the quantum world, it doesn't take any time. But in our own limited thinking, our focus keeps going to the familiar, the same routine. And so that's all we see. It's all we know. and they call it neural pathways in the brain. And you keep doing it. Same thing, same problem, same people, same. So A Course in Miracles is a way to become aware of what you've been doing and to say enough of that. That's simple. You just say enough of that. But here's the thing. When you make a decision to change the way you've been thinking and the way you've been feeling, it is uncomfortable because you're dealing with energy. And so for a moment, it looks like everything is shifting because it is. And when the shift is occurring, trust is required. So very excited for this morning because we're going to talk about that. And I was going to read today's Cafe Gratitude, but I'm going to just ask, does anybody want to read it instead? Jen? Everyone can have a seat, please. Welcome back. So I'm excited to continue from last week's topic. Last week, I did a section from A Course in Miracles, I Feel the Love of God Within Me Now, and I did an illustration on healing addictions. And what I'm going to do just to start is I'm going to show you the illustration from last week. I'm going to give just a very brief overview of what I talked about last week. And I'm going to give it straight over to David Tompkinson. He was here last week, and he came up to me afterwards when he saw the illustration. And he was very excited. And he started reminding me of the illustration he'd shown me before. He works a lot with addiction. He's going to tell us more about his story when he comes up. But what we did last week was just a visual image of what's going on in your thinking, what's going on to get yourself back to the center of who you really are. So this is who you are. Love is what you are. Eternal, changeless, nameless, ageless, no body, pure light, one with everything. This is the truth of what you are. And what I did last week was I showed you different layers. Now, in reality, there's no such thing as layers. There's no such thing as this visual. But my mind works well when I can kind of have a feeling of what it looks like. So the first layer is emotions of joy, gratitude, appreciation. And Jesus in A Course in Miracles calls this the real world. Then outside of that, you have your fear-based emotions, worry, sadness, depression, guilt, anger. And outside of that are thoughts. And then you've got the physical. What we think here in the world is that it's all mixed together, that we're a body and we have good thoughts and negative thoughts and happy thoughts and worry thoughts. And then we remember who we are. And then we have pain. And now we're focused on the body and we have problems. And we just think it's all one big mix. But if you can start to think about it, so it's Course in Miracles is mind training. You're training your mind in a systematic way to notice what you're noticing, to wake up and see, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I saying? It's very basic. And this is incredible for me because if you think about feeling emotion of joy and gratitude and appreciation, you're in the proximity of who you really are, because light doesn't feel. Light doesn't feel joy, okay? It doesn't feel appreciation. Light is all power. This is what you are. So when you're bringing yourself, so when you're in a space of worry and you can see how you're feeling, that's a miracle. It's a miracle when you can notice what you're noticing. And in the play, I love A Course in Miracles because it's a systematic way. I love you so much, Nancy. She's beaming the light over there. And when you can begin to practice noticing what's going on, and I love A Course in Miracles because it gives us a specific way to really look specifically at the things that we're thinking, the people. It has fill in the blanks in the workbooks lessons. It says, think of a person who either angers you or you're afraid of. And it says that person's name has already crossed your mind. You probably all already thought of someone. And it asks you to fill in the blank with the person's name. And then Jesus, who's the teacher of A Course in Miracles, invites us to shift from thinking about that person and all their qualities, all the things that irritate you, and then shift your perception. And that's what this is. It's literally changing your direction. And then it invites you to bless the person. So you're using the energy in a whole new way. And when you bless another, you're actually blessing yourself. And when you're blessing yourself, you're blessing the world. And so now you have a new purpose in life. You have a new purpose here to just really go, what is going on here? And then, so it's the emotions, the thoughts. So now we're getting into seeing how you're thinking about the past, you're thinking about the future. He shouldn't have done that. She should have done that. Thinking, just thoughts. But you think it's real. And the mind devises ways to solve problems. And so now you're stuck out here. And then that brings us to the physical. So what I was saying last week is that this is just energy. This is the prodigal son story. You wandered away from your father's house into illusions, into darkness. Your energy goes here. So let's just say it goes to the body. You're experiencing some physical symptoms. This now becomes your center. And so now this is your circumference. And you're going to get effects from wherever your location is. So when you locate yourself in a thought, I shouldn't have done that. I'm so bad. This literally becomes your center now. And this is where you live. And you are getting effects of your location. And when you see what you've been doing, you recognize this is insane. You can make a decision to stop. So A Course in Miracles has so many practices of stillness, quieting the mind. And you turn around, come back. And you might, as you're practicing at first, you might only land here, which is good. Like you were here. And now you're like, you know what? I'm gonna think about ways that I can remember my appreciation for my brother. So you've literally taken the energy and you've turned it around. And what Jesus says, like it's literally a dedication and a commitment to keep bringing yourself back to your center. It's a journey within. You really just take your focus off the external. You recognize all the images and the people that you think you see are coming from you. You put them there. And they're your mirror reflections, part of your most holy mind. But while you think you're a body, I'm a girl, I'm this age, I'm this weight, I have this much money, you believe in other bodies. This is where you live. It's all these bodies. I'm insane. And so you come back, you say, okay. And Jesus calls this, that stopping point, a holy instant. A holy instant is where you don't want what you've been getting. You really just say enough. And what I love about A Course in Miracles, it's a collaboration between you and you. The self of who you are and the self identity that you think you are as a personality has to collaborate with each other. So the light is already being what it is. It doesn't need anything. But you begin to collaborate by saying, I'm not going to attack anymore. Or at least I'm going to be watching for when I attack. I'm collaborating with the light now. I'm being present. I'm seeing, okay, wow, I'm making myself feeling guilty for eating that donut. That's an attack. Like, we make ourselves guilty all day long. We make other people guilty. We have judgments all day long. And so in the holy instant, you stop and you have a willingness to remember the truth. It brings you back here. Maybe you land a little closer here, pretty close. And what it says in A Course in Miracles, God will take the last step. So what you're doing is you're making a decision. And this isn't pretend. You actually have to work specifically with the problems and the people that you think are irritating you. You're just undoing them. You're saying, I have a willingness to see things differently. And you suddenly see all this after a while. And, this is where addictions are. Addictions are physical. Their thoughts are here. They're here. Isolation. I don't know where that goes, but somewhere out here. And what happens? So alcoholism I had somewhere in here. I kept saying, I don't want this. I didn't want this. Some people like drinking and it's okay and it's not a problem. For me, it was a problem and I really didn't want it. And for 5 years, I could not quit. I kept trying to control it. Behavior is out here in the physical. That was my problem. I was hanging out here and nothing was changing because I hadn't changed my mind. But over those 5 years, I kept having a willingness. And literally one day in 2001, in March, it literally disappeared. My desire to smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol just went away. I didn't do AA. I got into that later because I really wanted to do the work of Alcoholics Anonymous. But for me, why that happens, and this is quantum, is when you hang out here, and this is where your focus and your energy is. So that says energy and focus. My energy and focus was more here on really wanting to be helpful, using my body for communication, to serve, wanting to just be generous and give, wanting my life just to make a difference. So I was like moving here. I don't want to make a mess of this drawing, but this all disappears because it's energy. What are you laughing at, Al? It's already a mess. But these are energy fields, and when you hang out here and you stop putting your energy over here, this quite literally disappears. Who has that experience? So that's last week's artistic expression. And now I'm going to call up David Tompkinson, who's going to give us his brilliant talk on addiction.
See if I'm brave enough to turn the switch on.
You are?
I turned the switch. I don't know if it's working,
That's-
but you can hear me anyway.
Oh, but
I don't-
that's not clipped on anymore.
Oh, hello. Oh, okay. We don't really need amplification in this room. We just need it for the folks. Hello, everyone.
Hi, David.
My name is David, and I'm brilliant. Lisa says so. Now, most of my life, I would have refrained from ever accepting that at all. But the Course in Miracles teaches me I'm brilliant, okay? There are times when I get reminded otherwise, but that's another story. So, yeah, Lisa presented this last week, and it just dovetailed with a map of the human journey that I came up with. It started with my supervisor, my first mentor for therapy. I was became a therapist about 28 years ago, and my first mentor was a wonderful guy, and he was very knowledgeable about addictions from inside out. He was a recovering alcoholic. So am I. And in the early stages of my practice, most of my clients came from addiction. So I developed kind of that expertise, but it expanded. And my understanding of his model of the addiction tree also expanded to include kind of a map. It's my map. It's a very simple map of the whole human journey and what it looks like. And as a matter of fact, at one of the men's retreats that we did together, he and I were co-facilitators of very intensive men's weekends, actually trying to help men get in touch with their feelings. What do you think? And it was very powerful because men walk around with many, many feelings, most of which are often repressed, held down, because of a culture which tells men that they should succeed, always be in charge, never be vulnerable. If you are any of those things, you are weak. And so the purpose of the retreat was to undo that. And it was interesting because eventually, as we kind of got known for doing these retreats, we had a couple of cops come, talk about having to repress your feelings. I had an FBI agent one time. I had a Navy SEAL, all of whom were sitting on mountains and mountains of stuff, which vocationally, there's lots of airline pilots, where it is your duty to keep your feelings down because you are in charge of much greater things in the moment and you can't allow your feelings to. So anyway, that's a little bit of a sidetrack. So this is a map I would like to share with you. I must say that the thing I love about the Course in Miracles, we all have stories. I deal with stories all the time. I deal with stories of people who have been traumatized in their childhood. But the Course in Miracles allows us to finish the ultimate story. That's what I love about it. And that's depicted in the layers that you talked about. So I want to just take you through this. We start up here with oneness. This is our existence before we were born onto this planet. You can call it God, you can call it love, all of those things. Still the best description I've heard of this is from Anita Morjani's book, Dying to Be Me, where she describes her near-death experience where she was clinically dead, but she described where she went when everybody else said she's dead. And it's a marvelous description in that book. I'd highly recommend it to anyone. And then what happens is we get born. With that birth, we had what the Course will describe this tiny mad idea. In the Bible, it talks about getting kicked out of the Garden of Eden because that was the original state that we were in, was Eden. And so it's a new dimension. and speaking from a therapist and my experience in working with clients, I call this stage original pain. Anybody here that was born into a situation of happy, joyous, and free and was able to maintain that all of your life? Oh, nobody here. Okay. It's kind of part of the package. Now, as a therapist, obviously, I've dealt with some of the worst expressions of that in terms of parents who were abandoning, who were abusive, who were neglectful, who had never completed their story, who had never come to terms with what happened to them. So they could do no other than that. So, I've dealt with all forms of what that might look like, original pain. It's the stuff that goes way back. It's the foundation in which your human life starts to get built on, oftentimes with many, many imperfections and erroneously, because you are no longer part of that which is truly who you are at your core, because you start to get defined by how other people see you. And other people see you through their projections. Lisa does such a great job of talking about that. If I'm not feeling good about me, it's hard for me to feel good about you. If I'm not pleased with my behavior, I'm going to see all kinds of problems in your behavior as my kids. And I'm going to do what was done to me, and it gets passed down through generations and generations. So the thing I talk about is that when you are a child, this high, our first mandate is to survive. And sometimes it's like grasping for your next breath. And, that's an experience that I had as reflected in things like I have not so much, I have a severe startle reflex. My granddaughter loves to come up behind me and do the boo thing. And she sees me go 5 feet in the air. It makes it a lot more fun for her. Makes it a little more traumatic for me. But anyway, that's all rooted in my experience of what happened to me when I was a kid. We all have our stories. I don't need to go into real depth about that. But this original pain, we have ways of mitigating. When you're this tall, you don't have a skill level to intellectually deal with the abandonment, the pain, the trauma that's coming down to various degrees, but to some degree in almost everybody. So nature, God gave us these amazing ways of coping with that. One of them is daydreaming, going into altered space. It's a form of leaving your body awareness, depending on how severe the trauma might be. Sexual abuse is in the news a lot. It was in the news a lot in my practice. Both women and men, by the way, which is why Irene and I started doing gender-focused groups, because we were doing groups of men and women, these intensive feeling groups, but the triggers were just too many from the opposite sex where they had received abuse. So we did the gender, men with men, women with men, and we just kind of stuck with it. So a kid who has this burgeoning life energy, to grow and be creative and explore and find all the things of the world. Like they fall in love with the world between 2 and 3 years old. They just want to put their fingers in light sockets and try everything out. So you have to have boundaries. But that's their energy is. If they have experienced trauma and if they experience less than loving behaviors, particularly in the part of their source relationships, now their life energy has to be siphoned off into keeping themselves from feeling the full impact of this original pain. They have to tuck it away, and kids are very inventive in ways of tucking it away, but the behaviors that are involved in the process of tucking it away can look dysfunctional to the outside world, having nervous tics, it can develop in all other kinds of things. And as adults, as you get older, they somatize and develop into digestive problems, stomach problems, headaches, migraines, you name it. All of these things keep all therapists in business, by the way. All sorts of therapists. So it's not all a bad thing. But a kid has to, on this end of the spectrum, but kids have to learn ways of mitigating this. And one of those ways is putting them down deep in your psyche, in what Bill calls the vault, okay? And, but then when you get older, you develop this, becomes a wall, but this is the addictions tree. This is the first part of this model that I learned. As we get older in adolescence, so all this time, not knowing it, when we grow up, part of our life energy is being siphoned off to keep this down. Because this, to a child, is like life-threatening. And even as you get older, you realize, oh, I can function, I can play sports, I can do this. There's a portion of this that is still in your psyche. It's in the deep unconscious or subconscious. So it's there. And so, but when we get older, we find out, smoke that first marijuana cigarette, or maybe it takes more than one, get a little help. First drink, mother's little helper. If the trauma, to the extent that it's more extreme, the more extreme will be the response to the mood-altering drugs. It's just wonderful. It's nirvana. So we have drugs, put alcohol in there too. Now I want to just say one little tiny disclaimer. There's certain drugs, and these can be, over-the-counter drugs, as we know with the whole epidemic that's going. I can start with that. Sometimes when you get into a drug, it can take up a life of its own. So you can become an addict, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to come from a totally traumatic background. So I want to issue a little bit of a disclaimer. There are people who come from fairly functional, healthy homes, and they are addicts. They become heroin addicts. It is because what started out as a little painkiller becomes so nice. We like nice, we're just geared that way. So we keep going and going and going, and it becomes. So it's not all. But for many of us, me included, there is a string that goes back to this. Because what happens with this is it relieves the human being of the energy it takes to keep the original pain at bay. Hey, when you're feeling good, wow, this mother's little helper. So it's very, very attractive. But what is this? Basically, on a behavioral level, drug addiction and alcohol abuse is a repetition compulsion. It's a repetition compulsion that doesn't have a very good ending. But there's lots of things that become an addiction in our lives, or a repetition compulsion. Food, overeating, sex, love. We're not talking about the love that Lisa was talking about that's at our core. It's the love that makes us feel like somebody cares about us, and it helps our self-esteem. It's a very transient kind of love, but that can be addictive. Relationship addicts, needing someone to fill me all the time. It acts like an addiction. Gambling, which can be any form of risk-taking. Money, needing to make money. You can probably name some others. Anything, really. Any kind of a specific behavior repeatedly can become like an addiction if it gives you the illusion of soothing or comfort or feeling good, Any others? Obvious ones that I might have missed? Shopping.
Facebook. Exercise.
You can even have a feeling. You ever known angry people that just get angry all the time, just angry? That can be like an addiction. A lot of codependency. Exercise, overdone. Yeah. Codependency, people pleasing.
I think anxiety and fear, I always kind of wondered what my
Fear. Yeah. So these are all things, and including emotions, that are basically out of balance, that have got you by the throat. So when we get stuck in these and they begin to rule our life, it produces what I call life symptoms.
What did you say? It gives you the illusion of comfort and the other thing? Comfort.
Safety, relief, feeling good. We have this idea of happy in our culture. Everybody wants to be happy. Happy is not the same as joy. It just doesn't have the grounding. So you can be in all this and have moments of true, what you think is true bliss. But the trouble is, if you're suppressing, if you look at feelings on a continuum and you have, say, the negative ones, so-called, and the positive ones, you know, anger, remorse, guilt, shame, blah, blah, blah. Then you get into joy, happiness, pleasure, fun over here. It's one continuous. If you suppress it on one end, you suppress it all across the board. The soul, the mind, doesn't make all the differences. So people who are carrying lots of this, or haven't, or are carrying a lot of fear, it's not that they can't be happy, but they can't have the full measure of joy because they blocked it, because it hasn't all been reckoned with. The feelings need to be reckoned with. Yeah, this is especially, well, I'm kind of a specialist with men. It's why it's really important for men to go into the original pain, because men can do all kinds of things to try to create not just joy, but culture's view of what is success. Make lots of money, build a big house, drive the car, do all these things, which are giant distractions from the truth about who they are, which has nothing to do with what they own or what they have.
Probably workaholism too.
Oh, work. Thank you, Linda. Big one. Big one. Do you know Michael, the movie maker? Michael Moore. It wasn't a real popular one, but something about the next war. And
Where to invade next?
yeah, where are we going to invade next? He goes and talks to people in Italy and France and so their culture regarding child rearing and the role of work. And they are astounded that we start with just a 2-week vacation and that no maternity leave or very limited. They have 2 months. And they just think that's just a part of life. And then Michael Moore says, and you get paid for this? Oh yeah, we get paid for this time. But their culture is built around a whole different kind of balance. In the United States, we have such a horrendous work ethic, which is almost punitive. Well, it was punitive, right? In the 1800s, children and women, especially. So anyway, this becomes the wall, but you see, it serves to block you from having to cope with any of this. This is still tucked deep in the vault. But too much of this, we get life symptoms. Can't sleep well, okay? Relationship problems. Okay? Overeating. Anything, we just get these symptoms. Our life just isn't working. We lose jobs. We lose a sense of ourself. Depression, yes, depression. The most common things that we hear about, ADD, I can't ever, it's the cultural diagnosis, ADD. And just, stress. So, if you're into an addiction, say like alcohol, for example, and you start to feel these things, what's the most natural thing for an addict to do? More, right? Go back. So we're into this sufficiently enough that we start to produce these. The remedy to the mind of an addict is to get more relief. Go back in. And then what happens? We put the plug in the jug and we start wanting to screw everything in sight. I'm sorry, but or we plug in the jug and we up our work. We start get 2 jobs, 3 jobs, but we're not drinking. That's an example, or whatever, or sugar, or whatever it is, So then we get more of these. Get more of these. Oh, we got to double up on this. More is better, right? More is better. So we keep going, and then it goes back to more life symptoms. We add to the list. We keep trying up here again. Let's not do this, but let's do some of this. We're into that whole cycle, that repetition, seeking to find joy and love. All the things that is promises by the Course, but we're looking in all the wrong places, Because exactly. So when you're into this, and I don't know if you in your life, but I've had periods in my life where I was definitely into this. This is what I call misery. It's miserable. It's awful. And then at some point, you may hit a bottom, or you may come across somebody who is an inspiration. You might have another tiny thought that says, maybe I need to stop doing what I'm doing. Okay? And so you stop. And you may get help. You may go to a 12-step program. You may come to a church. You may even walk into a Friday morning Course in Miracles meeting and say, wow, there is something here. I don't know what it is, but there's something. I just got it. I can't do this anymore. In AA, they call this the gift of desperation. Yeah. And now I've known people that have made suicide attempts and come back, and we hear that a lot. So when you start to begin to get some light into this whole scenario here, what happens is you have to put down these things. These things have to relent, whatever it is. You have to make some kind of behavioral change, because that creates a crack in the wall. And with that crack, you start to begin to see the hope of light. But guess what? When you go through that crack, what's the first thing you run into? When you start to become conscious of your own life and what you are doing, likely to show up are these things. This is why quite often when people make their first attempt at the Course in Miracles or any other spiritual path or whatever, they often start to feel worse rather than better. I think the Course talks about that. Well, I know you've talked a lot about feeling the feelings. You can't avoid the feelings. And contained in the original pain are some pretty negative feelings. So you have to reckon with them. Now, this is in the stage, speaking as an alcoholic, where a lot of people, when they first get sober and they go through the first pink cloud phase, life starts to get drudgery. It even gets worse. They're telling the truth. They're being honest. They're not drinking, and they're holding on like this. And they say, holy cow, if this is sobriety, I think I'd rather be drinking. And a lot of people relapse, and they go right back. Now, there's equivalence to that. That's an AA model. But there's lots of equivalence of starting to get sane, getting some light, and then crash. The clouds come in, and you say, what have I done wrong? Because we have an idea in our mind that, hey, once we can feel it, it's just a clear, smooth path. We don't realize that when we were kids, we tucked away a lot of stuff. And it's in our bones, in our tissues, in our back. Feelings get trapped in this body. That's why the work that I did as a therapist, and Irene does, it's called experiential therapy, a lot of feelings expression work, because people can start to make the transition into their thoughts and minds feeling better when they release all the stuff that's in their bodies. So there's the original pain. When you reckon with this is the short form now, when you reckon with the original pain and face it and don't avoid it. And by the way, it's very easy to try to do this. What's that called? Bypass, spiritual bypass. And that can happen in many, many subtle forms. You know, that's why people who are really, and Irene and I are just starting that annotated, the latest version of Course in Miracles. We just started studying it, reading all of the original notes of Helen and all the cameos, the explanations at the back. We figured it might take us a couple of years, but we've made a commitment to go back and do it inch by inch, right through but we're loving it. We're kind of getting, a lot of people, the first time you read the course, it may not be the last time that would be a good idea to read it with any literature. So it's easy to get into the bypass, and then you'll fall down at some point. You'll feel miserable. But when you work through, now you've got this path through the misery, when you work through the original pain and come to terms with it and finish that story, stop holding on to it, then you create another pathway through the original pain. And then what you're looking at. Yeah. Yeah. Now, you can get glimpses of, the good news is, it's not like black and white, all or nothing. You get glimpses of this along the way. And your body and your mind will tell you when there's a little bit of more work to be done, when you need to talk to somebody. I'm still seeing clients. I'm just kidding. I thought it was a joke. Yeah, or whatever. But talk to somebody. The thing is, the pain, which by the way is the pain of separation. That's what it is. We all want to belong. And when that is blocked, that's when we feel pain. And any number of behaviors can block us from the pain. I used to tell my men, because I had a lot of men that had physical abuse from fathers. They were beaten, whipped, whatever, by dads. And I said, in that moment, you are totally abandoned. Beating is about abandonment. And so they have that experience of separation. So the good thing is that when you get through this stuff, and this is the reward of doing this kind of work, and it's hand in hand with coursework as well, because then you can truly embrace all the principles that point to this when you're clear. When you're not clear, you can do it. Now, can do it cleanly, I should say. Now, can you go, let me see, I'm looking at thinking of the Buddha, Siddhartha. Can people go from their dealing with suffering and their journey of trying to find the meaning of suffering and get right to here without going through this? No, I think there are people that can. I'm not one of them. And yeah.
But here's the thing. It's kind of like what you said. Microphone. If I turn this on, it goes off. You can. But even Byron Katie, who had that experience, she had a one moment of, Anita Mojani's another one, like people who have these death experiences or these enlightenment experiences where they have a full blown realization of the oneness and the allness and just the light. Every single, Eckhart Tolle was another one. Every single person I have ever read who had that still had to go back. And it's what you said. It's kind of like, I don't know how you said it, but it's like little threads of lingering old stuff that you have to go back and do the work and clean it all up.
Actually, am I on? Okay. Bill was very transparent and shared an experience, his own experience of that, very illuminating, about feeling unloved by his mother. And it happened at a time when he and Lisa were physically on different sides of the world. And in his feeling state, he was not feeling good about whatever it was, and zoom, went right to that memory. It doesn't mean you have to go and do an archaeological dig for each and every time, but you need to do some clearing of that in order to be receptive, open and receptive to this. I answered that too quickly. I said, yes, what I meant to say is, I believe that there are masters, ascended masters. Now, the Buddha, he did experience suffering, but his suffering came from what he saw in the world. And then he worked for 20 years to get to the point of understanding this. So he didn't come from well, I don't know how dysfunctional his family was, but he certainly wasn't beaten or raped or any of that in his life story.
But isn't that where our suffering is from what we're looking at outside of us too?
Yeah.
So
Well,
it is. I think like our suffering is from everything we're looking at too, and the way we're perceiving it. And like the Course in Miracles, helps you to see that what you're looking at is within you, but you're projecting it out. It's the same thing in AA. I don't care. You can pray till the cows come home, but if you don't, like you said, if I don't clear out my channel, if I don't look back at everything and look at my part in it and look at my fears, what Lisa just said, I think every person has had to look at their suffering and fears. I think in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says, our life is like a tapestry that's shot through, the threads are shot through with fear. And every thread of my life had been shot through with fear. And I had to look at all that so that I could put it down so it can't touch me again. Otherwise, little pieces do come up and touch me. Oh, my mother did this. Oh, my father did that. Oh, today, I can see it and know I'm only seeing what I remember writing. I got 5 notebooks of it. And that's all that's happening right now. And it brings me back up through to my oneness. This is not real. I am the love of God. I am this. My source has me. And all I loved what you said. My world is the world of my source. Pure love, pure innate happiness. That's God's world for me. It's not this one. But that's where the fear of the ego wants me to keep saying, nope, it's a boyfriend. It's a child. It's, it's something outside of you. It's this world. It's not.
I'm glad you brought that up. One of the caveats of this, one of the pitfalls can be after working through this and you're looking at the original pain, is that you can get hooked into the, remember the child's mandate is to survive about everything else, above everything else. Being a victim has a very alluring, seductive, because in the human world, the popular world, being a victim is very powerful. You can use it to your advantage many, many times, and that can be an illusion way of feeling good temporarily, because I'm a victim. He did it to me. So this is why the healing is so important, so you can get up to here. Because like you said, and both of you, perception, if I've got undigested stuff in here that I haven't completed, then I'm going to see this is a problem out there, that is a problem, you is a problem. I'm going to get hung up on the politics of the day. I'm going to use every excuse I can to get involved in stuff. There's I think I referred to this once before, a very popular book back in the 60s. What was it called? Games People Play. And one of the favorite games is Ain't It Awful? Did you hear about such and such? Isn't that bad? Yeah, I can't believe what she was doing. Look, it just goes on. And the fun is who can keep upping the ante on Ain't It Awful? Eric Byrne was his name, called Games People Play. And he talked about all these little psychological games, all to keep people from having to look at the truth of what's inside of them. Let's stay distracted. The whole message of our culture is basically telling us, hey, folks, you're going to feel much better if you could just get distracted from who you truly are. Even including truly the love that you are. That doesn't sell product. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? So is this helpful? Does this make sense to you? You want to come up and put your input? I think this fits hand in glove with Lisa's, just makes it. You both can't talk at the same time.
Yeah, I know that.
Lisa?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. We'll stand beside each other.
Stand by me.
Stand by me, yeah. Well, I don't have anything to add to this. I really thought that this was brilliant. I mean, some of you guys know the story. Bill and I were going through relationship problems last year. We almost got divorced. We called David in for 12 weeks of therapy. And it's so amazing for me because I've had A Course in Miracles since 1992. I have dedicated my life to it. I went to a spiritual community for 10 years. I gave all my stuff away. I was totally devoted to God, practicing. And what I loved about, I didn't love it when it happened, obviously, because I just thought, why is this happening? Like, there's Bill who's totally dedicated. There's me totally dedicated. Why the fuck is this happening? Like, what is, and of course the mind is just like, you're the problem. And then I would go back later and I would recognize, all right, Bill's not outside of me. I'm causing this. But I still couldn't get out of it. It went on for months. It just kept, the things that we were saying to each other, you couldn't believe, and like I came to the point, like David said, and I'm speaking of this because Bill has also talked about it also in public, is that I went to Denmark to teach A Course in Miracles, and he had just had knee surgery. It was a year ago. And he had this revelation while I was in Denmark of being abandoned, and he thought it was from me. Like, he kept thinking, like, when I went away, he'd be okay for a certain amount of time, but if it went on too long, he would start having something happen. And what he realized when I was in Denmark was that I'm exactly like his mother. I'm independent, I'm free spirited. And he went right back into the original pain. And I don't even know how he came to know to call you, but he said to me, do you want to do therapy? And I'm like, no, I just want to get divorced. And I was serious. I was like, no, because see, that's the games people play, is that the ego, like, to me, it lurks. Like, it lurks in pockets, and we don't want to go there. And so this is a totally uncompromising path where I really, and Bill would be saying to me, Lisa, come closer to me. Love this guy. Don't you love this guy?
Yeah.
Seriously, you really, like, he's, for 12 weeks, he was there just giving us a new way to look at things. And for me, I was like, nope, I don't want therapy. I don't want to do this with you. And Bill's like, well, then I'm doing it. I'm going to call Dave. And he called you.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I remember where I was.
Yeah. And I thought, why am I resisting? Like, this is the part where you really get to look, why am I not doing this? And Bill would say to me, Lisa, the Course says when you're having difficulties, what you want to do is go find someone else. Push that one away instead of actually looking at what the problem is. And I just remember, like, okay, yes. And we'd already put the divorce papers in, and we had a court date even. And you told us, okay, I will work with you. It was maybe 1 hour sessions for 12 weeks, I think is what it was, or 90 minutes or something.
90, yeah. More than an hour. You can't do couples work in 1 hour.
Yeah.
A lot of therapists don't believe that, but I do.
And you told me, or Bill told me, you have to cancel the divorce court date. I was like, nope. No, I'm not doing that.
Well, I remember what I said.
Like, what did you say something about it?
Don't make a decision to stay together. Don't make a decision to get divorced. Let's go through a process and then decide. But submit to the process first.
Right. But something happened in there where I was keeping, like, that door open. Like, that I would do the work with David, but I'm still going to keep the court date. And I remember why am I doing that? Like, that's where you really get to look at like where your safety nets are. Like, I'm going to do it, but only a little. And I'm going to control the process. So maybe Bill can get the benefit of the therapy with David, but we're still going to get a divorce. And I remember like, and that's where like life gets exciting, where you can really get to see your own little tricks. And I was like, all right, let's cancel the court date. Like if it doesn't work and we want to get divorced, we can go reapply and put it back in again. But to me, that was the place where you make a decision that you're not going to avoid that original pain. And you go into it with an open mind. And it does take a real commitment, because you don't know what else is lurking. Like those threads, those little threads. So.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to add one. I'm getting waved at. A question.
Laurie asked, have you thought about writing a book? Maybe you have. If you haven't, it would really help a lot.
Perfect.
Harville Hendricks, sorry. I already wrote it. But I want to add one thing, and this is from Harville Hendricks. You wonder why we have a 50% divorce rate in this country. Why do people get attracted to mates who sooner or later it's just not going to work and they're going to leave, or you're going to leave? Why do we get attracted to that? Well, there's a theory about why that happens. I like to share that because it's pretty interesting. Let's use an example, because mostly women in here. And women's main complaint about men is abandonment. And men's main complaint about women is judgment. I'm always judged. That's just an aside. But anyway, so let's say you were a woman who had been abandoned. The little girl has a wound in there, original pain, that has probably been kind of put down there. She falls in love. This is the purpose of romantic love. It cements two incompatible people into a relationship under the guise of romance. So you marry the person. So this guy tends to be someone who does exactly what happened to the child. He abandons you. So why did you marry him? Because that child and that soul, or that individual, always wants to heal. You don't even know, but always has it's like plants that grow up, or grass in the sidewalks of New York City, seeking the light. Against all odds, there's a growing thing in concrete. We want to heal. Now, you can't go back with mom and dad because you got abandoned by one of them. You can't do that again. That's an old story. So we unconsciously select somebody who will re-wound us in the same way, so we have the possibility of working it through to a different conclusion. The little child hopes maybe this time we can do that. And this is what I teach couples, because if somebody who's the partner of someone who was abandoned knows that that's a sensitive issue, they can keep that in their mind and be careful to call when they're going to be late. Be careful to be very attentive to things, because they do it as a gift of love, because they know that's a wound that's inside their partner. This is the kind of unconsciousness that so often in our culture with marriage is that we don't think of these things. Irene and I didn't. Grace of God, we're still married, I'll tell you the truth. But does that make sense to you? We're still seeking healing from that parent, but we can't get it from the parent, so we'll find a mate. Okay?
So I have we have 2 minutes left. I have a question for you. So
Sure.
Are you still taking clients?
Yes.
Tell anybody? Okay. So this is David Tompkinson.
Oh, gee.
And what's your website?
www.pathways.com.
Pathways.com?
I never dialed
No, that's
into
not
my.
it, is it?
No.
Pathways?
Well,
Pathways of life. Is it pathways.com?
No, I think it's just pathways.com.
Pathways.
I should check it out.
Yeah, right.
I've been at this a long time, really. And we don't use that website much. I have another.
How did they contact you if they wanted to set it up?
Pathways.com. And I
Oh
love
my
this.
gosh.
I love this group so much because Irene went to South Africa because she got up here and she's brilliant. And yeah, she got somebody watching from South Africa said, "Will you come?" And Pathways, that's not it. Okay, let's type in.
Phone number, do you want to give that out?
David Tompkins?
Let's put in his name.
Your email address.
Are you on Facebook?
David Tom.
Yeah, I am on Facebook.
There you go.
You can contact me on.
They can find you on Facebook.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. I have never dialed into our. I haven't done. We don't use it. It's kind of a.
I think
Inactive.
new information's coming in right now. Pathways to. So if you type in David Tompkinson pathways, it comes up.
Yeah, I'm in the. I mean, people call me because they said
Okay,
they
it's pathwaysnh.com.
pathways NH.
Pathways.
That's it. No, it just came to me. Somebody else had pathways, so we put NH. Pathwaysnh.com.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay,
Wow.
so thank you guys. And we're going to end with our closing prayer.
Microphone, Lisa.
Mike. So if you all can join me in a closing prayer, we make a circle.
You're brilliant.
That was
You're
fun.
brilliant. You are brilliant. I told you.
That's awesome.
Why don't you guys link up in the middle? Link up.
Kelly, do you want to do the prayer?
Sure. Will we stand over there?
Yeah, come on over.
I'll hold it for you.
Can we do this?
Yep.
Oh, Spirit, Father, Mother, Creator, we are so blessed to have all been drawn together today by divine appointment. Those of us here in illusory person and those of us on live stream, to be able to hear these two wonderful teachers speaking your truth through them. And so we're so grateful for that. And gratitude as we step into this next week of celebrating gratitude, we can remember this, that we are all one, that is the truth of us, that we are not our original pain, and that we are the light of the world. And so it is. Amen. Blessed be.
Amen.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you, Arthur.
We love you. And I just want to say thank you guys for being here. I mean, this world really does need light, and it starts with a decision, and we just take it out. And if you would like to help support this class and the space and the money that we give back to Unity for the space, we have a donation box over there. We appreciate your generosity. Really helps us with the room, with the live stream. For you guys online, there's a donate button on the Teachers of God website, teachersofgod.org. And what we do here is we use the Unity abundance prayer. So I want you to just close your eyes. I want you to think how abundant you are. I want you to think about what you have. I want you to think of it as energy. And now you're going to start moving that energy. It can be money, it can be love, it can be joy, it can be your presence, you listening, you blessing someone. And we say the blessing, divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I am, all that I receive.
All that I received. Yeah,
Some love you.
So good.